Hello everyone. So today I wanted to talk about the models of disability. I will be looking to my left, to your right a little bit to read off my blog post about this. First of all, I will explain what actually is a model of disability, and then I will include some footage of a Q&A with some panellists that I did a Q&A with a few years ago, like individuals with various conditions and experience with the round the world of disability. So that's 5 minutes. I'll just explain what actually is a model of disability. So a model of disability is a framework, a theoretical framework used by academics, professionals and policymakers to shape how society understands and interacts with disability. So these aren't fixed, they evolve. When I studied this a few years back, I only knew of the social and medical model, and now there's so many more, which is quite exciting. They basically provide a lens through which we can analyse barriers and advocate for rights and influence societal change. So the social model is a transformational outlook, really. It's one of the empowering models. I'll put the footage on now, so just to mix it up a little bit, asking Sydney and Jenny and Jess what their view on this is and what it is, and then I'll elaborate on it afterwards.
So the first topic I wanted to open up, I would like Sydney to take this one on if possible, but the social and medical model of disability is something that I found out about through the training I had with Look, and I found it very empowering, and it's not something that I had heard about before. It would be, I think, good to share because I don't think it's widely known, and it's just a nice thing to know. So take it away, Sydney.
Okay. So yeah, I first came across the social model of disability actually when I started working for Look as well. And the social model of disability, to break it down, it basically sort of says that a disability, we don't want to see a disability as a disability, so we're going to change that word and call it an impairment. It's something that is affecting you. But what is disabling is not the impairment, and it is more the world around us. And the social model states that if the world around us was accessible, then our disability or our impairment would not be disabling. I hope that makes sense. That is the basis of the social model, and it is really interesting because if you think about that, I guess it's true, and I think it's a slightly tricky concept. But it's ambitious, but I like it. Like you say, Naz, it's quite empowering to think of it that way and to think of it, okay, maybe, I have this impairment, but if the world was set up in such a way that it wasn't an impairment, to an example, things like a Braille menu in a restaurant is a very rare thing. And if that was everywhere, that would be far less disabling to me. So that's just an example. But yeah, so that is the social model. The medical model is basically the opposite of that state. I haven't spent as much time studying it, obviously, because it's not. It's the opposite of empowering, but it very much focuses on the disabled person and almost how they're a burden on society, in a way. So yeah, and how actually the world should not be shaped around a person with a disability. So yeah, they are the two main models. Obviously, the one we like to focus on is the social model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like it because it makes the person who's disabled stop thinking, or help them in not thinking that they're the problem. But yeah, it's very easy to make things accessible, but there's still a long way to go. Like even with Brighton being a diverse place, it's still not inclusive. Just for example, went to a cafe earlier and sent an email to the manager just addressing some accessibility tweaks, like turning the lights up a little bit, or highlighting the steps with a different, like a colour for visually impaired people to see. And there wasn't even like a ramp going in, which there could have been. So it's not accessible to wheelchair users, or yeah, it's just tiny little tweaks that could make a huge difference. But what do you guys think? Have you heard of this model that Sydney has talked about? Yeah.
I heard about it a few years ago.
Microphone.
Sorry. I heard about it a few years ago. I didn't know about it before I set up Disability Pride Brighton. But I mean, basically, the medical model is saying that the disabled person, that there's something wrong with them and that they should change to fit in with the world, which is obviously nonsense, whereas the social model says there's something wrong with society and that everybody should be able to fit in. So I think it's a great model.
Yeah.
I think that if we look at lockdown, that was like a really big kind of example of that and of society. So many people were forced into situations that we encounter daily, and the world reflected and changed and adjusted to that, because the every able-bodied person was also having to kind of deal with that. So for me, that was a really, it's interesting, and obviously I think it's a bit bittersweet that not all of that has kind of maintained following lockdown. I think there's a lot that can still be learned. I think people are very quick to forget what it was like to be kind of forced into that situation.
It was a bit of a leveller, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I think that, I think that there's still a lot we can learn from that, and that was probably one of the first examples in history where people have been forced to kind of experience what others experience on a daily...
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I felt that as well, like when the pandemic hit. I quite enjoyed it for a few months, because I was like, oh my God, everyone else is isolated just like me. So that's quite like a statement to say in itself, isn't it? But it's true.
It's true. If I'll be completely honest, I couldn't have graduated from BIM without lockdown. Like, that's just how it is. Like, I had just recovered from a bout of sepsis. I was homebound, and I was literally having conversations with my lovely student support officer about not returning to BIM because I just wouldn't be able to do it. And then suddenly we were in lockdown, and everyone's now housebound, and now my classes are accessible, and wow, I can access them, I can finish them, and I can also obtain a degree the same way everyone else can.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said for that.
So basically, it's a model of disability that argues that people are disabled by societal barriers, by our environment, by the inaccessibility in this modern world we live in, rather than by their condition. It was first coined by Mike Oliver in 1983, and this model shifts the focus from individual limitations to external obstacles. For example, a blind person isn't inherently disabled by their lack of sight, rather they are disabled by inaccessible environments such as a lack of braille signage or digital content without screen reader compatibility. For me, things like not having the end of a step coloured with a different contrasting colour if all the steps are the same is something that really, really makes me feel blind. It only takes things like turning a light switch up, or moving obstacles out the way, or highlighting the end of that step so I can see where the next step is, so I don't, fall over. It's these little tweaks. The thing is, I can't control everything. I can't control how the world is set up around me, and it is debilitating. It is out of my control. But what I can do is raise awareness about these things, and maybe people out there will hear this and will think about how to make an inclusive environment, because this is something that affects everyone. Disability isn't a personal thing. It can affect anyone at any given time, and this is why it should be so, priority that something is done about it, so the world is accessible for everyone to coexist in. Essentially, the social model pushes for systemic change, improved accessibility, inclusive education, and equitable employment opportunities. So there are things like the Equality Act in place, but again, this isn't something that I was aware of until last year, until I lived through a bout of discrimination in the workplace. So the Equality Act 2010 is there to protect you in the UK, and it's something that also should be known about, and I will talk about more in upcoming videos. But it's also very useful to know about these models to refer to as well. So the medical model focuses on disability as a deficit. Now, if you think about it, the words to label conditions are quite debilitating in themselves. Even disability, it's like it focuses on the dis-ease of the what is actually an ability. That should be underlined and highlighted in capital and bold. Things like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, deficit disorder. Why is it a deficit and a disorder? Why has the medical system labelled these conditions in these ways, and why aren't we questioning these terms that are used? Visually impaired. Why am I visually impaired? Is there something like wrong with me? What is the impairment? They're the two that come to mind right now, but disorder is used quite a lot in conditions, labelling conditions as well. Whereas if we focused on all of these conditions as something to be honoured and included, because every individual is or has a gift that comes with these conditions, but we don't obviously initially know or can realise or acknowledge this or comprehend this, because we're so focused on our condition being a deficit, being a problem, and the medical model is heavily responsible for this. So the medical model of disability views disability as a biological or medical deficit that should be treated, cured, or managed. This model frames disability as a personal problem requiring medical intervention, often ignoring social or environmental factors. For instance, a blind person would be seen as someone who needs corrective treatments like surgery, glasses, and assistive devices, rather than someone who requires structural accessibility solutions in society, like something as simple as tactile paving before steps, or for the end of the steps to be coloured in a contrasting colour, like I said before, which can highly prevent falls and trips. It's crazy the amount of times I've heard that a blind person also, this is quite shocking, has like fallen onto a train track. If you notice, there isn't actually tactile paving before that drop, so it doesn't really set us up for success if we have low vision. Yeah, it's a lot to process. You can probably hear the passion in my voice, because I've had so many experiences where, for example, I will ask, it took me a lot to ask in public for help, for support on reading the bus timetable, the train timetable, because these systems are very, like, they've got small print on them, even the digital ones, and I just can't read them. Even with my phone, it just doesn't work. So I have to ask a member of the public, and the amount of times I've asked and they've said, it literally says it on the board, or it says it on the screen, and then I'll say, no, I can't see very well, like I'm blind, and then they'll say, oh, well, don't you wear glasses? Why don't you have treatment like laser surgery? Or the list just goes on, and it's just so, it's like people's default when you say you can't see very well or you're blind. Yeah, that's the automatic response you get. Why don't you wear glasses? is there any treatment for it? Why are you focusing on the treatment? You know, why? For so long in my life, I grew up with everyone around me trying to heal me, trying to send me off to healers in India and Turkey and wherever there was a healer that could fix blindness. And it made me feel like that sort of response from family, from society, from the public, from strangers, it makes you feel like you're a problem that you need to be fixed. But I'm not broken. I am powering through life, finding creative solutions to manage my condition, to survive, to be able to thrive. And I think I should be honoured for that, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot of power, of willpower, of courage, of bravery and curiosity, to learn how to do things again, like how to walk again, how to read again. I used to be able to read books, and I used to be able to walk without a cane. Well, at night time, there were times where I wasn't using a cane, but now I use my cane. I use my long cane at night time, and I have devices to help me read, or I listen to audiobooks because I can't physically read a book. Learning to do everything, all the basics again, is quite a lot. It's quite a lot when you're having to deal with that and the response that you get from this way of being from people, this autopilot response that is expressed. What else can I rant about? So critiques of the medical model emerged in the 1980s, notably through Thomas Jazz's work, which argued that the model failed to consider poverty, discrimination and environmental barriers. This critique helped lay the foundation for the social model's growing influence. And another example I'd like to share is one from personal experience. So as a blind person, registered severely sight impaired, that word again, impaired, it only takes for the lights to be switched up, like I've said before, for me to feel not disabled. And unfortunately, people like to create a dark ambience in many places, from restaurants to, I don't know, holistic events to education settings and more. I may be blind, but I feel made to feel like I need to be fixed when incidents like being denied a support worker in employment happens, or when a teacher doesn't use bold black pens to mark my work, or a teacher doesn't remember that I'm blind after years of teaching me. There was one time where I bumped into a teacher at a music event. I think she was trying to get my attention, and my friend was like, she's blind, like she doesn't know who you are, because I was saying, oh, who's that, and then she was like, what, you're blind? This lady taught me for like 3 years and she still didn't know that I was blind. Yeah, this happens. Especially when I don't think at the time I was using my cane to highlight the condition. So yeah, I am made to feel disabled when I am not recognised for my hard efforts to think creatively, to navigate everyday sighted situations, and instead I am labelled disabled. The medical model view there, guys. I hope this helps. I'm giving like examples as I go along as well, but those were the two main ones, the social and medical model, that I first learnt about, and I found it really fascinating, and I hope that you do too. So now we move on to the charity model, disability as tragedy. So the charity model of disability depicts disabled people as passive recipients of aid, evoking sympathy rather than empowerment. Many fundraising campaigns, particularly those using children, rely on emotional appeals to encourage donations by pulling on heartstrings, with evoking sympathy fueling content. While charity can provide essential support, this model often reinforces harmful stereotypes by portraying disability as something to feel sorry for. We often unconsciously absorb these narratives from media and advertisements, from film. When have you ever seen someone in film that is actually being represented for a condition they actually have? I've not seen it. I do have a friend, I don't know if she'd want me to say her name on here just yet, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but she's an actress and she is going to be playing a blind person, and she rewrote a script that felt like it wasn't portraying or representing the blindness right. So I thought that was extremely, like, that's amazing, an amazing thing to do. Can you imagine being an actress and being on a film and having the courage to rewrite that script, to hopefully be met well, to, you know, put yourself out there, represent yourself for who you are with what you have, your identity, actually representing it in the right way. And it is the right way because it's true to them. It's not, you know, a sighted person playing a blind person. That further fuels the stereotypes and misconceptions and creates barriers. So I think that's an amazing thing that she's doing. So without an appeal for sympathy or underlying a message of pity, when have you ever seen someone representing, like a person with a condition representing their condition authentically, is the question here. The way disability is portrayed shapes public perception and in turn how society treats individuals with health conditions. So that's that. By the way, if you have any comments about these, please do comment below. I reply to all of the comments. I'd really like to keep this conversation going as well. I think it's a very interesting topic here. The next model is the political and relationship model. So the political and relationship model, as explored in Alison Kafer's 2016 publication, Debunking Disability, argues that disability is deeply political. It emphasises the need for systemic change and relational understanding, where the experience of disabled individuals are shaped not just by their conditions, but by policies, legal rights, and societal relationships. This one is very new to me, so I'm not entirely sure, but I do recommend Alison Kafer's book. I haven't read Debunking Disability, I've heard good things, but I've just started to read the book. I think it's called Feminist, Queer and Crip by her. Actually, I think I'm going to play the first few sentences of this book because I thought it's just incredible how she's started writing this book.
I have never consulted a seer or psychic. I have never asked a fortune teller for her crystal ball. No one has searched my tea leaves for answers or my stars for omens, and my palms remain unread. But people have been telling my future for years. Of fortune cookies and tarot cards, they have no need. My wheelchair, burn scars, and gnarled hands apparently tell them all they need to know. My future is written on my body.
So yeah, that is a very beautiful piece of writing from Alison Kafer. I don't have a condition that is visible unless I wear, I don't know, a lanyard that says I'm blind, or unless I have my cane on me. Mine is quite complex. You can tell at night time, you can really tell, but during the day it's not so obvious, and that's why I get questioned. But Alison Kafer, she describes that hers is visible and she is in a wheelchair and she's got burn scars on her, and people look at her and think, well, you know, her future is already written for her. And can you imagine what that does to your psyche, what that does to your conscience, if that's the messaging that is being instilled into you from whenever you have this condition for the rest of your life. Like that takes a lot of work to undo. I feel I can empathise, I can understand, but it's not in a way that like I haven't had a teacher or someone say, oh, you'll never be able to do this because of your condition, or you should give up this. I've more had it in the sense that, you know, oh, you're never going to be able to find someone, or I guess I've had it subtly, subtly, quite deeply and powerfully, or like, you won't be able to do what you love doing because of this condition. You won't be able to pursue your passion. There's a sort of like fueling of feeling very like, there's a lot of sympathy and pity and sadness around it, rather than empowerment around it. And I feel that we, as, I'm going to, in quotations, say disabled people with health conditions, have to prove ourselves extra hard than your average able-bodied person that doesn't have conditions, to prove that we are worth something, to prove that we have a place in society, to prove that we are authentic, we have a gift. It's a lot to prove your worth in the world, when that shouldn't be something that is questioned or thought of otherwise. So yeah, the political and relationship model, I'm not entirely sure. That's quite new to me. If you know more about that, maybe do comment below. But yeah, as I said, it argues that disability is deeply political and emphasises the need for systemic change. So yeah, top down, like with most things, where the experience of the disabled individuals are shaped not just by their conditions, but by policies and legal rights and social relationships. I guess that explains itself. Like, this should be encoded in policies, in legal rights, like the term inclusion and everything under the umbrella of inclusion and equality and diversity, to implement or integrate us into these policies to help us feel included and to prevent discrimination. That's a mouthful. So the next model is the cultural model of disability. So the cultural model of disability highlights how disability is perceived and represented within different communities. So a key example is the deaf community, which often sees deafness as a cultural and linguistic identity rather than a disability. So sign language, for example, is not a fix for deaf people, but a rich and valid form of communication. Similarly, blind individuals navigate the world with adaptive techniques, and cultural shifts towards inclusivity can redefine social perceptions of blindness. So yeah, recognising the condition and paired with the way that they do things, rather than saying it's a disability, it's almost like a unique trait that person has. And similarly, blind individuals navigate the world with adaptive techniques, so with the cane, with many different things. It's quite a spectrum of things that we use to navigate, and it's, you know, with deafness and blindness, it's not black and white. Like, it's not that a deaf person can't hear anything. In some cases that might be the case, but also similarly, a blind person, it's not like they don't see anything, but in some cases that is the case. There's a huge spectrum. I have 10% of my vision and I see colours. Sometimes I mix them up. I see, you know, people's faces if they're up close. It's complicated, it's quite complex, so it's not black and white, which I wanted to state here as well. So yeah, cultural shifts towards inclusivity can redefine societal perceptions of blindness. Just want to state, I'm not sure about the cultural model of disability in terms of, it's not something I've studied or researched, and I don't know if this relates to that model, but in different cultures, like around the world, people with disabilities are treated people with health conditions are treated differently. For example, I am registered blind in England, but when I travel abroad, if I go to a tourist attraction, for example, in Turkey or Morocco, I'm bound to have a denied access to the attraction with a disability ticket, or I am questioned and I'm told that I'm fine because it's not a visible disability. So that is what's embedded in their culture, sadly. It's good to have awareness of that as well, because yeah, you might get a shock when you travel and it's not the perception, the collective perception isn't the same as where you're from, basically. I feel like I fight for my rights quite a lot in the UK, but actually go to Turkey or Morocco, or I don't know where I'm going to go next that this is going to happen. They only see disability as disability if you're wheelchair bound and if you look like you're, I don't know, struggling in some way. If you're not, I'm not entirely sure. It's like their conscious is flooded with the stereotypes and misconceptions. And again, media and film have a lot of responsibility for this, because when have I ever watched a Turkish series with a blind person that's actually blind, that's representing a blind person that's not completely blind? So this is why it's good for me to talk about this sort of stuff, because I am representing the proportion of people who have a small amount of vision, and yeah, I'm just raising awareness for that. Again, if you have anything to say, please do comment about that. Next, I go on to talk about on my blog that I'm reading, which I'll link below as well, if you prefer reading it through after to process and reflect on. So, disability as part of the human experience. These models, the affirmative and humanistic viewpoints, recognise disability as a natural part of human diversity. So this is good news. This is a very evolved model, affirmative and humanistic viewpoints, recognising disability as a natural part of human diversity rather than an inherent problem to be solved. So by framing disability as a valid way of being rather than a defect, these perspectives promote self-acceptance, dignity and agency. Whew, all of that. It's like society and the medical model, they really strip you of your identity, of your agency, of your dignity. They really do take your power away from you, and people don't realise they're doing this because it's so embedded into the collective, like the general consensus, and this is why it's good to talk about, so we can debunk this a little bit and make you aware of how the way you frame things, the way you do things, and how you perceive things can actually affect an individual with a health condition. So, can you imagine how the narrative would change if we created inclusive spaces where we worked with and recognised everyone's strengths? Imagine how colourful and how vibrant and advanced the world would be if we just simply worked together. Ooh, I really like this model. I think it's probably my favourite one. Recognising disability as a natural part of human diversity. Yeah, because it is. That's what it is. You know, we're all different. We're all unique. We have different beliefs. We have different ethnicities and everything. Everything about us is different. Every individual is so unique because we're made up by our set of DNA and our experiences that no one else can replicate. I love saying that. I read it in a science museum once in London. And disability, see, it's instilled into my vocabulary as well because it is, but I'm so averse to it. Disability, ability, my ability it's just a natural part of the human race. Like, no one's perfect, and we learn from each other by learning all this stuff to help include us into society And I don't know, like this is given to us so we can work with each other. And if you look at statistics, I can't pull out one right now, but generally they show that if your sort of workforce is diverse, then there's more room for creative ideas and innovations to happen, because there's more experiences in the mix there, and there's more like viewpoints and like suggestions on making things accessible, making the space and events and devices and anything accessible and inclusive, so like to help the business grow and expand. And in education, like this isn't something I was taught about in education. Every time someone picks on, I don't know, someone with autism, no one said anything. None of the teachers said to stop or that that was wrong, but that was their unique quirk that they had. Every time I hear someone say, for example, if I hear someone say, oh, I heard that so-and-so's child is autistic, how bad is that or something, then I will say, well, that's why is that bad? Like, are you aware that people with autism can be highly intelligent, they can hyper-focus on things and really excel at them, and they just need to be in an environment, well, we all need to be in an environment that is supportive to help us evolve and grow and share and express and live our lives, to thrive, to share all these wonderful creative things. So that's that point. But I do really love this affirmative and humanistic viewpoint. I think one more thing that I will say about it as well is how, if you think about it, like in our tribal days, like how, you know, with all of these conditions we have that maybe they had then, how they would use that to their advantage. So I'm guessing, I'm assuming, someone like me who is hypersensitive due to my fibromyalgia and my eyesight as well, I'm like hyper using all my other senses. That would make me good at looking out for the tribe, say at night time. Even though I can't see, I can pick up on energies and I can really feel deeply, and that's a gift that I have, because well, I recognise that as a gift now. Like then that would have been really useful. So it's just a matter of like using all these symptoms and quirks and traits that I have, that any one of us have, to our advantage in modern day. I feel like there should be like diverse workforces everywhere. I think the like society would be so colourful and so creative and so inclusive if that were the case. And yeah, it's a shame that we see as a collective that having conditions is a huge limitation, it's a huge barrier. And yes, of course there's limitations and barriers that come with the condition, but by not questioning why we see these conditions as barriers or limitations as a whole, we really make those individuals feel like a problem and a deficit and a disorder. Like their whole identity just becomes a disorder. So, practical applications of the social model. When accessibility measures are implemented, disability ceases to be a barrier. For example, a blind student may struggle with traditional classroom settings, but thrive when accommodations are made, such as using bold black pens on whiteboards, providing screen reader compatible material, or allowing verbal rather than written responses. While blind individuals may still need to exert additional effort due to increased sensory processing, simple adaptations can level the playing field. I feel like I want to say here, the amount of times I've expressed to a teacher my needs and they haven't been met, it's very discouraging from learning and being in that learning environment. And I would suggest here, whatever condition you have, and if you are taking up any education, if you are in education, I would suggest writing up a needs document and really elaborating in detail, having a meeting with that teacher to make sure that that is all nailed down, because you deserve just as much as anyone else in the room to learn in an equal way to everyone else. And if that means larger print documents or braille documents or screen reader compatible material, then so be it. That is available. These things are here to help us. And how lucky are we to be able to use these things in this day and age? I don't know what people did 100 years ago or 50 years ago. You know, how difficult must have that been? Like, for example, when I'm teaching my yoga classes or whatever I'm facilitating, my sound healing, if a blind person comes into the space, then I will describe the room to them. I'll audio describe. I'll say there's like 4 windows, they're all like sort of wooden textured, there's light coming in through the windows, it's really bright outside, there's trees everywhere outside, the carpet is patterned, this is like a darker colour, just so that they feel included. I try and describe with all of my senses, and I include sensory things as well, like whether that's like allowing them to feel the blanket, like the texture, to feel comforted and grounded, or putting essential oils into the room, into the diffuser, and allowing them to use massage oils to really help settle their nervous system for the yoga session. This also interjects and interlinks with other conditions like autism. Like a lot of conditions almost need that grounding from all of the senses to feel like their nervous system can settle. It just takes a little bit of creative thinking to help include these people, and just asking what do they need, you know? It's not a crime to ask the individual, how would you like the space to be to make you feel like you have an equal opportunity to learn like everyone else, to an equal opportunity to be here. And I think the main thing is not making them feel like they're a burden and that it's too much to cope with and deal with, to accommodate for them. Yeah, it takes a lot to, I don't know, it doesn't take a lot, but adaptability is such a beautiful skill to have for facilitators, for employers, for everyone, anyone, every individual. Adaptability and creative thinking, critical thinking, all of these things. Okay, so now we've got the religious/moral model of disability and spirituality. So the religious or moral model interprets disability through cultural and spiritual lenses. In some traditions, health conditions are viewed as a test from a higher power. For instance, in Christianity, it may be seen as a divine trial, while in Hinduism it is sometimes linked to karma from past lives. This model can frame disability positively as a spiritual gift or an ability, but it can also promote harmful beliefs such as the idea that disability is a form of punishment that requires redemption. So as someone living with sight loss, I truly believe that my condition and everything that comes with it is a gift given to me to create positive social change. The universe knows I can handle it, and that I can weave it into my presence authentically and boldly with strength and passion. That there's so many layers to this, which does complicate it a little bit, but it's good to sort of dissect it and peel back the layers to see all these different viewpoints. They're so fascinating, where in Christianity sometimes it may be seen as a divine trial, whilst in Hinduism sometimes it can be linked to karma from past lives. I believe in a higher power. I call that energy, universal energy, and the reason behind my sight loss is meaningful and purposeful, and I feel like that is linked in with that higher power that's been given to me, so I can channel all of this and share and express and create as a guide, like inspired by my guide, which is my sight. I'd like to add here, linked with what I'm saying, grieving was a necessary part of the process of losing my sight, but it was made unnecessarily difficult by the world by a world that made me feel abnormal, as if I were missing out on life. I remember an old friend telling me when I was denied a provisional driver's license, so I think I was 16 or 17 then, so that was like 10 years ago. She said, "You're going to miss out on the best day of your life, the day you pass your driving test and hold your certificate." Comments like this seep into a person's psyche, but they are just a small part of a much bigger issue. The relentless messaging from all directions, everywhere, when like whether in social media, in film or culture, that frames disability as loss. It took time to filter out the noise, all that grit as in the messaging, to filter it all out. It takes time to see the truth that my sight loss is not a limitation but an actual gift. And I think people go a long time, like maybe sometimes the majority of their life, wishing their life away, like saying, "I wish I didn't have this, I wish I could see, I wish I was normal, I wish. All the time that we are wishing our presence away, we're not enjoying our lives, this one precious life that we have. But I understand, because it's made really difficult by society, by medical frameworks, the medical model, by all of this stuff that I'm talking about. What the world labels as a disability is, in reality, my greatest ability. And my best day won't be passing a driver's test, but my best day will be the moment I look back on everything I have accomplished, not in spite of the barriers I faced, but because I climbed the mountains, pushed past the obstacles, and pursued every goal with an open heart and unwavering determination. That will be my best day. Moving forward, disability as a collective responsibility. So rather than seeing disabled individuals as separate from society, the social and cultural models encourage a collective responsibility for accessibility. When we design environments with inclusivity in mind, everyone benefits, whether it's tactile paving for blind individuals or ramps and automatic doors for wheelchair users. By shifting the narrative away from deficit-based models and towards empowerment, we can build a society that strives on diversity and values all individuals regardless of ability. So what do you think? Could we allow these models to seep into our everyday conversations to help raise awareness of the negative messaging that has been so deeply embedded into our psyche? And could we find and explore creative solutions to enable our communities to be more inclusive by accepting and working with everybody's diverse traits? So, which model do you most resonate with and why? Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to seeing your comments. And any other models of disability that I don't know about, please do feel free to comment below and let me know your thoughts, what you resonate with and what you think in general. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and put your post notifications on and like as well. Show me some love. Yeah, on my channel I share a lot about wellness, and I teach yoga, I am a sound healer, a Reiki practitioner, and I do all sorts of things. So despite all the barriers and limitations, I'm here doing what I love doing, and I feel that that is an absolute luxury. I'm living, I'm breathing, I'm alive at this time. I may be blind, but I'm not broken, and I am an absolute powerhouse. I am empowered, I'm liberated, I have wings that help me fly. Sometimes they are clipped by society, by people's words and the experiences, the discrimination, but they grow back again, and I stand and I fly even stronger and bolder, and I show my colours, my vibrancy, and I show everyone my true self. I hope that this video was very inspirational to you, and I look forward to hearing what you think. Thank you.